Yo! There's less than 1 week left before the collab banners end. And there are still mixed opinions about Zelos. In this video, I will be stating my 100% honest opinions on Zelos so you can decide if you want to pull for him or not. To begin, let's first analyze his stats and abilities. His stats overall are mediocre at best. But his value relies mostly on his abilities and party buff. Weapon skill region speed party buffs are pretty rare, so in that case, Zelos is a very welcome addition. He also has the ability to teleport with a relatively low cooldown, which is very good, especially for arena. His exclusive weapon has solid stats, and his weapon skill complements his playstyle very well. However, he has no defense debuffs or built-in sustain, so he's not that good for PvE. His stat distribution is pretty good for his playstyle, in my opinion. He has enough damage to kill with chain, and enough toughness to survive until he can use it. Let's move on and see how he performs in most of the contents. I think Zelos' best use for Coliseum is to abuse his party buff on units like FP or Liner. But since I don't have those units built, we'll see how Zelos performs on a mono dark comp. His attack range is pretty short, so he often needs to dive in to deal damage. Since he's not that tanky at all, that is not something you want Zelos to do. His chain skill has a very big AO, which is quite useful for Coliseum. And since his normal attacks passes through units, he can deal a decent amount of damage if the opponents are clumped up. However, his normal attack damage isn't impressive at all, especially against single targets. I don't think Zelos is any good at Coliseum. Future Knight is a much better choice if you want a WSRS buff. My Coliseum rating, B tier. Ranged dark teams aren't that strong right now in the first place. And even if a dark ranged team becomes meta eventually, since he does not have any debuffs on his kit, he does not deal a lot of consistent damage. And his only team buff is a 10% crit chance boost after chain. I think it's safe to assume that future dark ranged units will be better for raids than Zelos. Unfortunately, I have no raid footage since there is no raid, but I don't think I need to actually test him out to prove that he's not gonna be that good in it. B tier. Speaking of PvE contents, we have co-op. Specifically, co-op defense. I'll just say it now, Zelos is mediocre for co-op defense. We already know that his normal attacks aren't that strong. His attack speed is quite slow, so it's hard for him to take down the twisted mobs. His weapon skill is also casted horizontally from where he and his target is. Since the mobs usually just walk in a straight line, it's very hard to get maximum value from its AO. The previous dark units are all much better than Zelos in co-op defense, so he doesn't have a place here either. And I don't think anyone wants to pull a unit specifically for co-op defense anyway. B tier. Finally, we have Zelos' best game mode, Arena. Zelos actually is a decent unit for PvP. Though not as strong as the top units such as Kamale, Arena, and Mayreal, Zelos is still in a pretty good spot in Arena. A lot of players downplay how good his teleport really is, with such a short cooldown and a defensive buff to top it off. It gives him a lot of outplay potential and rewards skillful gameplay. Though he's not really the hardest hero to use, with his mediocre stats and short range, he isn't that easy to pilot either. Also, being a dark unit, he's very good against the most broken hero, Arena, and there aren't many light units around to counter him. He's not that good on open maps since he has no constant mobility, and his dogfight capability is below average. However, on maps with a lot of walls such as Ancient Ruins, Zelos is disgustingly strong. And we can't talk about Zelos without mentioning his party buff. Zelos' niche party buff requires you to build around him if you want a working arena team. Most of the meta teams are focused more on dogfighting rather than playing for weapon skill. Due to his party buff, you can't just put Zelos in those teams. So for his best game mode, Zelos is still map dependent and not that flexible in terms of team building. But due to how good his kit actually is, I cannot downplay his strength either. So for my final verdict, a tier. So in conclusion, Zelos is a niche, yet map-dependent arena unit that doesn't really perform well in other game modes. Pull for Zelos if you want a fun arena unit, don't really care about other contents, or if you're a dark main that wants to be able to build all future mono-dark comps. Weapon skill regen speed is a very rare party buff, and I don't think they'll release another dark hero with this buff even for the next few years. Don't pull for Zelos if you are bad at the game, a meta slave, or a F2P that want the most value out of your gems. In all of those cases, Liner is a much better pull if you want one of the limited gacha units. So, are you gonna pull for Zelos?